Shalom. Call Haloim Yahweh, Bahasham, Hamashak Yahushai, Basham Kakdash. This is your fellow servant Tazawar from the GMS Orlando camp here with another lesson. First, I want to start off by giving all glory, honor, and praise unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Basham Kakdash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, whom rule well, and from whom we learn the truth. Shalom to Akim, who are not in GMS, but are pushed in likewise doctrine, in spirit and in truth, with all sincerity. To you few sisters that are listening and learning, as well as you speckled birds, who are scattered among the nations, looking like those nations. To the 144,000 elect men, and the rest of the hopeful elect, to you I say, Shalom. The title of this lesson is called Bread Defiled, and it was inspired by a clip that I saw in regards to 3D printed meat. Now, this clip was originally on what's this, IG, I believe. I'm not really sure, because I think there's a bridge or overlap between Facebook and IG now, or what's called Meta or whatever, where you can share between platforms. Anyway, I was forwarded this clip. I saw this clip, and this is not a quote unquote new thing, to the tune that is, that it's new news or new information. However, we are beginning to see the push and the implementation, or the preparedness to implement such foods. All right. We already see things like, veggie burgers and Impossible meats and all that stuff. And there's even on Netflix, they pushed a big, a few shows or series rather, speaking on the standard American diet and how people can get away from eating meat. And then they tied that from a health standpoint into CO2 emissions, right? So tying that into saying that we have too many cows, or too many CO2 greenhouse gases, right? The cows are farting and burping too much. Elder Yashawamba has been bringing this out for years. At least the past couple years, when they started doing the culling of farms, right? Beef farms and chicken farms. So we know that they're growing chicken in a bioreactor, right? Using stem cells from the animals. We also know that they've been pushing again for alternative forms of meat. Okay. And for food for thought, let's just say there were a lot of CO2 emissions in the air. Well, what would be the cure for that? The answer is to stop cutting down all the damn trees, because trees intake CO2. They eat CO2, for lack of a better word. They consume it and give off oxygen. So they convert the CO2 into oxygen for us. Right? So instead of planting more trees and stop tearing down the existing forests in the world, they're just going to continue to cut down all the greenery, pave cities and roads, implement, more toxic, industrious processes, and then push the bill off to you as we need to take cutbacks under, reducing the amount that we drive, switching to a electrical vehicle, and then finally, consuming less meat. Right? And so all of that is a web of lies and trickery that all converge at one point. Along with this devil creating GMO seeds and foods for those, who may be fine without eating meat for a time, because, we have to eat meat for our Passover. But if you were, a heavy fruit and vegetable diet, you can't even get fruits and vegetables, good quality fruits and vegetables, because they done bioengineered everything and GMO the shit out of everything. They're not rotating the crop fields. They're not having land Sabbaths. All right, to put the nutrients back in the soil so the food can have nutrients in it. So now this devil talking about they're going to double down on the engineered food to put synthetic shit in it to make up for the lack of nutrients that's already missing. So with that, let's grab Ezekiel chapter 4 and 13. And it reads, "And the Lord Yahweh said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them." Right? And let's read it in the NLT. It reads, "Then the Lord said, this is how Israel will eat defiled bread in the Gentile lands to which I banished them." Right? Well, we know that we've been banished from our homeland and we've been scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, throughout the four winds. Right? And again, this whole greenhouse emission and cutting back on CO2, Salakia, clean energy and all of that shit, it's mainly that's one of the philosophies and doctrines that's being pushed via Babylon the Great, right? And so clean energy and all this stuff will eventually turn into smart cities, and then those will eventually turn into 15-minute cities where you have no autonomy. They're already trying to take that away via the social credit score system and the digitization of the world currencies, which is on the horizon. Right? Meaning, you won't be able to get real meat, real food. You know, there will be a if you had steak, there's a limit on that because it's got a carbon score, it's got a CO2 emission score. If you had a real steak, right? So not like on that movie, what was it, Snowpiercer or something like that. Gonna be eating these blocks of Jello, these gelatin blocks made from abominable things. We'll just say bugs, unlawful critters, possibly, you know, the remains of you know, of people. They already said that there was a study came out that already talked about some of these fast food joints like McDonald's and all of that had human meat or human DNA. We'll say human DNA in their meat. You know, I don't eat that shit anyway, but that's just a point to think about, you know, when you out here moving around, man. So like Burger King, Taco Bell, Wendy's, all those places are probably not too far removed from the same phenomenon. And that is defiled meat, right? And we don't know if it's actual human remains or whatever, because people are talking about, you know, these fetuses that have been unalived or ground up in there, or they could be the stem cells, right? It's possible that these people have been growing their meat already and just not telling the general populace. And there's a very high probability that could be the case across the board, not just at Mickey D's, right? But even certain foods in store, you know, you get them, go to some of the, you know, lesser food chains like Save-A-Lot and stuff like that, that they got these bargain batches of meat, you know, with no bones in it. You don't really know. You don't really know, man. You know, so you do the, so this is why our apostles and elders, all right, and many men in the great millstone in our organization have said, you know, of course you do your due diligence and you do the best you can, but ultimately you have to rely on Yahweh Shai, man, and the grace that he provided for us. Because they changed the names of pork products. They use like 15-letter words, all right, to hide the fact that something has pork in it. Or they won't even tell you that it may have, that is lab grown, bioengineered. because certain things have become standard practice. You know, just like standard practice now is giving those cows that RSBT or whatever, you know, when you're looking at like ground beef or any type of dairy like milk, yogurt, or whatever, right? It'll say from cows not treated with RSBT hormone or whatever the letters are. You know, grass-fed beef, hormone-free, right? Cage-free chicken. You know, no steroids, no hormones, no antibiotics. These are things we look at. But again, ultimately, if you go all the way back to if you go to the source, right, the FDA, right, Food and Drug Administration, they allow a certain allotment of foreign material in the food product. Whether that be if you're trying to get you some dark chocolate, if you're trying to get you some cocoa powder or some beans or some flour or cornmeal, you know, even the cereal, right? You might try to get you some Raisin Bran or something, or like some whatever. They allot a certain amount of heavy metals in the chocolate, or in the food. Chocolate being one example. A certain amount of, you know, rat feces or bugs, right? Because instead of cleaning all of that up, it'll cost too much for them to revamp the whole infrastructure. They just say, oh, we'll just put it on the books to have, you know, it can have 10% in there, 10% cockroaches, or, you know, foreign, you know, natural whatever, whether that be ants, roaches, whatever. It ain't grasshoppers and locusts. It ain't stuff that we can eat. Lawfully. Right? Or they allow a certain amount of chemicals, like bleach and all of that other stuff, chlorine, during the washing process of, you know, certain types of chicken or meat. So you have to be very careful, man. And though there may be no law against ingesting chlorine, it's a known carcinogen, man. This is why they use it to kill germs in pools. This is why you have chlorine bleach. And this is the FDA, an entity that oversees, you know, the quality of the food and drugs for the nation, for the country. USDA. Actually, the FDA has a broader scope than just America. That's intercontinental. And then you have the USDA, United States Drug you know, so we do the best we can, man, but all of our stuff is defiled. Let's go to, because I rambled for a long time, Salakia. Let's go to Daniel chapter 1 and verse 'The point is in like the point is in 8. Let's start at 3. This is Daniel 1 and 3. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. All right. So this is Nebuchadnezzar. All right. During the time of when Babylon was in rulership. All right. During the time of Daniel. All right. And notice it says what? That he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. So this man wanted royalty around him. Even though we had become a conquered people by this time, you know, we still had our aristocrats, our nobles, right? So he wanted these individuals brought before him, right? Children in whom was no blemish, right? But well favored and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge and understanding, science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Right? And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that the end thereof they might stand before the king. Right? Now again, this is in Babylon. So the king's meat and wine, he allotted for our nobles, right? Our men of royal place, of royalty, to have access to his food, which ultimately was what? Sacrificed unto other idols, unto other gods. Right? Now, among the children that were sent, were of the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. Right? This is the point. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Right? Salaki. So when you read down and you keep going, and I'm not going to read down, but if you keep reading, you'll see that Daniel didn't partake of the meat and the wine. He just ate fruits and vegetables. Right? And then when he went to stand before the prince of the eunuchs and to be presented to the king, right? They had to undergo inspection. He looked better and healthier than the people that were eating the meat and drinking the wine. All right. And the reason I'm bringing this out, again, remember the title of the lesson is Bread Defiled. Right? And this is just one point to where the heathens, all right, knowingly give us defiled food so they can accuse us, to have us to go off, right? Fall away from our customs, right? It's a very slick way to kind of pull us into sin, to pull us into defilement, because it says what? At the bottom of verse 8, it says, therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. So even if the meat was quote unquote lawful to eat, like if it was beef or lamb or goat, you know, it was sacrificed unto other gods. Undoubtedly. Okay. Now there may come a time where we may have to learn how to do without. All right. You may have to make that judgment call for you, yourself, and for those brothers that have families. You may have to make that judgment call for your household, man. You know? Now, again, we already eating defiled bread, but this is why we pray over our food. Right? But in the event that something has that is unlawful, which those things are coming down the line too, you may have to abstain, man. And do as Daniel did and only eat fruits and vegetables for a time. You know, of course, if Passover comes around and, you know, you can set up provision to get your hands on some lamb, salaki, or some goat or something, then by all means. That is most likely going to take months of planning and bartering. You know, possibly. But this is the plan that the global elites have for the masses. All right. Let me play this clip because I've been holding it. So let me.
The entire world will start eating meat printed by a printer, and here's why. The reason this meat resembles real meat so closely is because the bio-inks used by the printer for its creation are actually stem cells extracted from cows and then grown in a lab. Once there are enough cells, a computer decides the shape of the meat, the ratio of fat to meat, and then the printing process begins. Look at these details. They are identical to real beef. And when it is ready and served, you won't even feel the difference. Even the smell will be the same. Many tech companies have already set their sights on the promising area of printing. To grow expensive and rare Japanese meat, you need at least a few years. But printing allows this to be done in just 2 minutes. Plus, there's no need to slaughter 900,000 cows daily, not to mention other living beings. Besides, it's cheaper and can be produced in much larger volumes. Only advantages, unless it turns out over time that there are some drawbacks. And here the question is, would you eat meat knowing it was printed by a printer? Soon, the entire world will...
So the question is, would you eat meat knowing that it was printed by a printer? Right? And they said what? Unless there's some drawbacks that happen over time. And you already know that this devil been trying to get rid of people, right? Gil Bates, right? The Gates of Hell, Gil Bates, guy who was pushing for that sticky icky, that Jabberwocky, right? He said what? He been saying for years, oh, you know, the world is overpopulated and, you know, we can if we're really well, we can reduce the population by 10 to 15% by, 2025, 2030, or whatever. And they've been already telling you that another demic is going to come. Right? Planned demic. Anyway, how much more to food? They've been talking about they were putting mRNA into the vegetables, right? Trying to figure out how to merge that into the plant structure, so when people eat it, they get a dose of that. So if fried meat, if natural meat, if you fry it or you burn it too much or whatever, right? Super extra crispy. If they say, oh, you ingesting carcinogens off of that, how much more this meat that's 3D printed? Because they grow it from stem cells, as they told you, from cow stem cells, right? So they say. So they say. I'm sure they can use stem cells from other animals, other living beings, right, to do this. There was another post I saw a little while back online where they were passing out samples of human meat over in Europe, like in Britain, telling people, oh, would you eat this? This is human meat grown from the stem cells of humans, allegedly. I don't know how true that is. That could have been a hoax or something like that.
Sorry, I didn't get that. The internet isn't reachable.
Ain't nobody talking to you, Alexa. Shut up, bitch. Salaki. Yeah, man, that could have been a hoax. But we do know that they put things out there just to soften the masses. They put things out in front of you via the media or in movies or in cartoons or whatever to kind of soften, prime the population, to prime the people for it being introduced into society in actuality. So they could have been taking polls of that because that's something that they actually plan on doing. Right? Now, let's grab. But this is no new thing. This is not new. Okay? As you saw, Daniel had to decline the king's meat and wine. Let's go here to 2 Maccabees chapter 6 and 18. And it reads, Eleazar, one of the principal scribes, an aged man, and of a well-favored countenance, was constrained to open his mouth and to eat swine's flesh. That means they held him down and tried to force feed him pork, swine's flesh. Right? But he, choosing rather to die gloriously than to live stained with such an abomination, spit it forth, and came of his own accord to the torment. Right? So that's just another example, man. And when you read up in this chapter, you can see how at the time the Greeks, Ptolemy and his minions, they were putting hell on us, man. They were putting hell on us. They were doing everything they could to get us to break the laws. All the way down to we couldn't even claim our heritage. We couldn't circumcise our children. If they found out, you know what I'm saying, there was harsh consequences behind that. They tried to force feed Eleazar, right? There's another place here in Maccabees where they were trying to use cunning. Instead of force feeding them, they was like, all right, let's, we'll give you some lawful meat and say that it's defiled. You just eat it in front of the congregation, right? So the rest of the masses can kind of like follow your lead, and they can eat, defiled meat as well. Right? So now it's gone from like from blatant back to cunning in this day and age. But how did they get around that? Based on their philosophies and ideology under Satanism, they just put the ingredients on there like, oh, we'll tell them what it is, but we'll just kind of encrypt it a little bit. So if you're not diligent, if you don't look and see what that stuff is, you could be eating, pork, whatever, bugs, whatever it is, chemicals, carcinogenic chemicals. But they make it out to be like delicacies, man. So ultimately, we just need Yahweh Shai, man. But the fact that they are, this is coming out more mainstream. They keep pushing it out there. Social media, they drop little stuff here and there. We know what's coming down the line, man. And those of us that are that will be like pilgrims, you're gonna have to become familiar with certain types of plant life and stuff that's edible, like dandelion, hibiscus, aloe vera, stuff like that we can actually eat. And it grows wild in certain places. Right? Rose hips. Anyway, I done rambled for almost 40 minutes. Salakia, this wasn't supposed to be that long, but this is just food for thought. No pun intended. Anyway, I pray this lesson finds you well, and I pray it was edifying. Until next time, Shalom.